Are you seeking a better way to accelerate your sales, to scale your business, to live a life with no limits? Accelerate Sales Podcast features global experts who have cracked the code to recurring revenues with proven sales systems and get you on the fast track to scaling. Now let's accelerate your sales with today's episode.
Welcome to the Accelerate Sales Podcast. You're going to learn three key things today. So one is why HubSpot, and also what some of the future advantages or what HubSpot are going to go into in the future, I should say. The second is using data triggers to find leads for your agency. Some really cutting edge stuff there. And finally, AI and how you can use AI to improve your sales calls. So if you're a first time listener, please subscribe if you love what you hear. If you're a regular, always appreciate those reviews on whatever platform you are. By all means, take notes, but we do a summary. So the summary in the app that you're listening to now, a more detailed in the website, which is paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast. And then also you can get the full transcript, and you can tell that you might hear a change in my voice today. I've actually got quite a heavy cold, so I apologize for that if I don't sound as I normally do. And before we go into our interview with Islin, I'd like to talk about two key sponsors. So one is the Cloud Consultants Collective, where peers are helping each other to scale their cloud consulting business. You can go to cloudconsultantscollective.com. That's right. Got it there. And the next is SendSpark, which is an awesome video platform that really helps you to close more sales. You can actually get 6 months free by going to paulhigginsmentoring.com/SendSpark. So our guest today is Islin Munisteri. She co-founded the Theia Marketing agency. They're a platinum HubSpot partner, and they love putting the right processes into clients, and in particular running across HubSpot, which is both marketing, sales, and service. And they've lived in 3 states, Texas, Alaska, and Colorado in the US. And you can find out more about Islin at theiamarketing.com. Now, what I'm going to do is hand you over to Islin Munisteri. Islin, so great to have you here on the podcast.
It's great to be here with you, Paul.
Yeah, well, look, I know you're a valuable member of our community, which we'll talk about later, but why don't we kick off with who you love to help and what problems you solve for them?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to target clients that are spending more than $1,000 a month on their CRM, which includes their marketing, sales, and customer success processes. So what we do is we put your business process into the HubSpot CRM across sales, service, and customer success. What we're really good at is mapping out your process. If you don't have a process, we come up with your process with you during our HubSpot onboarding and training meetings, and we get you using the CRM right away, so you start seeing value from day one. So you're not, stuck with a piece of software that you paid, say somewhere between 5 to 30K for a year, and you're just like stuck with it. You don't know what to do with it. We try and get that user adoption up as soon as possible.
Great. Well, we'll definitely unpack that. And why did you guys choose HubSpot? There's lots of platforms out there. Why HubSpot for you guys?
So when we were looking at becoming technology partners, it was clear to us that HubSpot is the market leader when it comes to CRM, because it's so much easier to use than Salesforce. I would say that Salesforce, I don't want to say anything bad about them, but you need a bunch of bolt-on products like Outreach and Clary and I think Doogly to really make it work the way you want to, so that your reps are actually inputting data into the CRM that you want. And there's also Microsoft Dynamics. One day, I think we'll go down that route. But as far as like a lightweight CRM that gets you from point A to B we love HubSpot because there's so much automation, so much workflows that you can do to almost have like another employee in your back pocket that you're using HubSpot.
Yeah, and look, it's I think traditionally when I say CRM, I normally mean a sales CRM because I came from that world, right? I came from enterprise where we used Salesforce and others, and yes, Salesforce is for some, not for everyone, as you mentioned. But I think what I see is a lot of the benefits is the three that you've got: the marketing, you've got the sales, and now you've got the service. So have you always been across all three, or did you start with particularly one or the other?
I mean, early in our infancy, we actually started out as a marketing agency 4 or 5 years ago. So we started on HubSpot Marketing Pro.
Yep.
But then, as we scaled, we realized, using the other tools was going to be key to our success. So we later implemented Sales Hub Professional, then went to Sales Hub Enterprise for better reporting, and then implemented ServicePro in the last, I would say, year to help manage our project pipeline and support pipelines so that we know exactly where we are with our clients. We used to use ClickUp, which was turning into a real mess, I think, trying to do project management there. So we're really happy to have moved to Service Hub Professional as our, as our project management tool that we're using.
Yeah, and I know that you've got a podcast called, RevOps Careers Podcast, but RevOps is, everyone's talking about RevOps these days. It's to be honest, I had to go and look it up to really understand what it was. And when I looked it up, I realized, well, I've been doing that certainly in my corporate career all my time, and as running a small business, you do, right? Because you see across all of it. But what's your, why do you think RevOps has sort of taken off, and how does HubSpot support the growth of RevOps?
So I would say RevOps, revenue operations, longhand, is really about supporting the business and getting a process, people, data, and reporting out so that you can understand the full picture of how your business is doing, not only from like a people side, but from a financial standpoint, and understanding, where you need to tighten up your processes and what's falling through the cracks. Because as a successful business scales, you have a lot of issues, a lot of growing pains, and you want to solve those as soon as possible and make sure that you solve it not with a quick fix, but in a scalable way. And I would say HubSpot helps you do that. So there's the marketing tools, which has social media, email, a lot of marketing automation, so you can quickly generate nurture campaigns to engage folks that you might not have engaged with in a long time. There's forms on landing pages. We have our website on the HubSpot CMS, which I would say is a lot better than WordPress, because when we were on WordPress 4 years ago, a plugin breaks, your whole website goes down, and then you have like $1,000 bill at the end of the day to fix it. So that's why we like HubSpot CMS. We use HubSpot Sales to manage all of our pipelines, like our FIA sales pipeline, understanding how big our pipeline is, where we're falling right on discovery or connection meetings, where deals are stalled. So you can have a much better understanding of your business that way. There's also sales sequences, right, that you can do, like a series of 5 emails. And then if you put workflows in it, you can put in even more emails and tasks and phone calls and LinkedIn to connect with your prospects. And then finally, as I talked about with ServicePro, we use that as our project management tool. Yeah,
great. And before you talked about documenting everyone's process or documenting processes, right? And everyone's got a different way of doing it. If I speak to any cloud consultant, they're slightly different. What's unique about the way that you go about, getting those processes in place before you implement HubSpot?
I would say what's different about us is that my husband and I are both engineers. We're both petroleum engineers by training, spent about 9 years in the field. And so, understanding the process, and then, if you're in the middle of like an investigation or something, but understanding the root cause analysis, right? The root cause of what's failing in your system is key to mapping out a good process so that we can cover up those holes and understand what's going on. Like I would say with one of our clients, which is like a B2C automotive parts store, like we integrated like eBay, like BigCommerce, a bunch of different platforms into their sales pipeline, so they understood where parts were, where their orders were, and helped onboard their whole team to start using HubSpot.
Yeah, and from a if you look at traditional ERPs, it's obviously got finance as well. How does HubSpot and some of the finance packages work well together?
Yeah, I think HubSpot integrates with QuickBooks, NetSuite, a few other platforms. But I would say that what HubSpot hopefully will continue to develop in the future is a stronger financial integration, or even having financials in the actual HubSpot environment one day. So it almost function as a ERP, not just a CRM,
Yeah,
yeah. Enterprise resource planning tool. Right now, how we're doing resource planning is really like, using Harvest. It's not great, but, at least we have a starting point. But yeah, as far as like integrations to finances and that type of thing, I would say there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and going back to the processes, so you map out the processes. How do you map them out? Like, is it dependent upon what the client uses, or do you use proprietary platform to map out those processes? How does that normally work?
Yeah, I wish it was proprietary, but you can actually search business process mapping in Google, right? And there's like standard shapes that you're supposed to use in the process mapping. What we use is a Lucid chart.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to switch to a Microsoft product after this, so that just in terms of document management, making sure everything's all in one place in the Microsoft world. But yeah, we currently are using Lucid chart to map our clients' processes.
Yeah, okay. And where do they normally host theirs? Their process. So you've done the process, it's documented, something changes. Like, do you guys provide after support to do that? Or is it, do you nominate a key user within the business? Tell us a little bit about how you, effectively make it stick.
So I would say we iterate a bit with our clients. Like I would say that, during quarterly business review or something like that, it'd be good to relook at the processes and make sure nothing needs to be updated, or if something does need to be updated, then that's when we do it. Because as companies grow and change, right, the process also needs to grow and change. It's not static.
Yeah. It's it's anything but static, I suppose, especially in today's world, especially with all of the disruptions in the supply chain and what have you. It's become very complex. And sort of the size of businesses you love to work with. What's how many employees is a given rule?
I would say we work with SMB and mid market. I would say that like the number of employees is not necessarily that important.
Mm-hmm.
I would say company size, like I would say above 3 to 5 million is our sweet spot, to about 100 million. But I would say, like, because you could have like a $5 million company with like 2 employees, right? Um, so the employee count is not as important as how big the company is, because then as the company gets bigger and bigger, that's where you need all the process, the automation, that type of thing to be in play.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned it that it's like having another employee, and I know at Coke we used to always we had SAP, Oracle, etc. We'd always say, oh, okay, in the business case we're going to be able to remove this amount of people because the system becomes more efficient, and therefore you don't need as many people. Does that really play out in these businesses? Like, does it save recruitment time? Because I know at the moment, we're all struggling to find great people, right? It's very difficult at the moment. How does, have you got an example where that's actually played out?
I would say that like when you're first implementing HubSpot, you don't necessarily need like a marketing ops or a sales ops person to run the system. You could probably have an agency or a consultant help you along. But as you grow and scale, and as your processes get more intense and you have more people right in the system, it becomes advantageous to hire, I would say, a revenue operations person. I remember I was interviewing a CRO on the RevOps Careers podcast, and he was able to grow revenue by 1,500% by hiring a sales guy and a RevOps person at the same time. And so, I mean, as far as like taking away employees, like it saves a lot of time, right? But at some point, these systems become intricate enough that you need to hire someone to take care of them. I mean, another thing why I don't recommend folks to go on Salesforce right away is that you're looking at hiring a Salesforce admin with your implementation.
Yes.
Right. You can't just run Salesforce without an admin generally. Like you need someone there for like to support the system.
Do you think that HubSpot will end up getting there though? Like they're going more and more enterprise, it's getting more and more complicated. If you bring in finance, do you think it's going to go on the same path? Because some people say that the journey of HubSpot in a way is sort of mimicking the journey of Salesforce. I know that it's definitely got a better usability because of the timing that it released versus when Salesforce did. But do you think it'll get to the point where it will get more complex and you will need that person?
Yeah, I mean, like there's new roles popping up as like, a HubSpot admin or a HubSpot technologist, or and you've seen a lot of HubSpot strategists. But I would say, as HubSpot continues to grow and in use cases and complexity, at some point you'd probably want to hire an internal ops person, not just a HubSpot ops person, but like a general operations person to take care of the system, general revenue operations person.
About HubSpot. So some people, some agencies rely purely on HubSpot leads. Others, do it all independent. And then there's sort of a hybrid. Where do you sit in that spectrum of HubSpot providing you revenue?
I would say we're a hybrid. Like as we scale and we're, as we get better at the sales process as a company, I would say HubSpot, is helping us by driving us leads, but we also get better at farming our own leads as well. So it's, I would say it's a combination of both. You can't rely solely on HubSpot to drive all of your business because that's referral based, right? And you can't solely rely on referrals. You still need the outbound hunting to drive business growth.
Yeah, normally I ask the question in the deep dive, but I'll pull it forward now because it makes sense. But what are you doing to get your own leads at the moment? What's working really well?
I would say we are using LinkedIn messaging. There's, you can install, like, there's programs like Lead Feeder. We use Zoom Info websites. So they basically map the IP address. So say this IP address belongs to X company, and this IP address visited your company. So at least you can see which companies have visited your website. And so we prospect off of that as well. And it's really like having a mixture of as many channels as you can. There's also communities, like different Slack communities. And there's just so many different places where you can find leads, right? It's just all about taking the best advantage and like learning how to prospect, like where are your leads, like where are your strongest leads coming from.
Yeah. And what are you doing on LinkedIn messaging? Because I know that's, where a lot of partners are getting leads at the moment. What are you doing in particular in LinkedIn messages? Are you a direct? Are you less direct? Like, what's your methodology of doing LinkedIn messages?
Well, I mean, I attend networking events, and then I try and connect with everyone after the networking event on LinkedIn. There's also, I would say, like, you can also get info from Zoom Info and other places of when folks are getting their Series A or Series B funding. And then those generally are good times to talk to a prospect because they're receiving more funding, which means they're upgrading their systems and their tech stack at that point. So there's lots of ways, right? I feel like you just have to find the way to begin that conversation in whatever way possible, and that's how we get our leads.
Yeah, and is there a particular role that you normally go into, or is it vary by company? You going top down or bottom up? How do you for your approach strategy?
I would say I'm looking for certain titles like revenue operations or marketing operations or sales ops. If it's a smaller company, you target obviously the CEO or VP of marketing. Yeah, I mean, it's really working on building out your ICPs. Like I attended a HubSpot training on prospecting, like how one of their partner agencies prospects, and they find their top 25 companies in, say, cybersecurity, and then they send them website audits of how they're doing, right? I would say there's lots of different ways of prospecting. So yeah, it was interesting. I was trying to get there's actually like different sales consultancies. They do the prospecting for you, and they bring forward, and then you just attend the meetings, right? And I tried that, but they said that the web development SEO space was super saturated, so they couldn't help us. But it's just interesting. It's like making sure that you're differentiated as not as a marketing agency, but as a CRM implementation specialist, more technology partner, not marketing agency. I think having that positioning in the market really plays a big role.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think, with a lot of agencies, we've used agencies in the past, and I've had clients who have used agencies. And, I think the hard thing is often they've got lists that they just recycle through different clients. So they don't get super specific because that takes more time. And then that doesn't work from a unit economics point of view. So it is hard. I'm not saying all agencies are like that, but we found that, anywhere between 80 and 90% unqualified. So yes, they'll get your leads, but they're not leads that are your ICP. So therefore, it doesn't always work. So, that's why we do it in-house. And I think, most of the clients I work with do it in-house. And you talked about, different sales and marketing, you got to try different things. And I think That's great. How does you and Lucas decide, who does sales, who doesn't do sales? Like, I know you work with your husband, so, how do you separate duties when it comes to sales marketing internal?
Definitely. Oh, and before we jump off the, how we get leads, Zoom Info also has a product called Intent Data, and Cognizant has that same. Well, it's not the same product, but they're partnered with Bombora to give intent data. So basically, I'm not quite sure how it works, but when you're searching for, say, HubSpot on your work computer, right? It like somehow it knows and it sends an intent signal via Zoom Info, and so you can also hunt via intent data as well.
Great.
So I would say like how my husband and I split up duties is that I do the connection call, and if the connection call goes well, then we go on to discovery. I do more the business side of the discovery call, take notes, follow-ups, that type of thing. Whereas my husband does the technical side of the sale, because HubSpot is a technical platform, right? So you need to understand all those intricacies. So we do the sales together, and then I generally do the proposals, send it out for signature, and he does the customer success side with the rest of our team. So it's broken out that way. It works, right? I wouldn't say it's perfect, right? But it like that way there's at least a part-time salesperson helping him with deals.
Yeah, that's great. And I think certainly for ourselves and other clients, we do use a mix of technology and people. So I've got a person dedicated to my sales admin. If you look at RevOps, I suppose it's a version of that, and that makes a considerable difference. So that I'm just left with the stuff that only I can do best, and not get stuck in admin because we're all short of time. And you talked about communities before and a way to gain clients. Also, I know that you're in our community, which is a cloud consultants collective. And I remember actually you asked the question around what are people doing for proposals, etc. But just tell us a little bit why you joined our community versus, say, the HubSpot communities and other communities that you've seen out there.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually lead a HubSpot community. I lead the Women in Revenue HubSpot user group. And we have quarterly virtual events so that anyone in the US, or if you're feeling the time difference in Europe, can attend as well. And I think I joined the Cloud Consultants Collective that you host because it was a good way to find partnerships with folks. And I mean, there is a lot of value in the community. Like I attended a proposal writing, I think, event that you put on with actually another HubSpot partner. So it was interesting. Like I think there's a lot of value to be gained from communities, but you need to give and take, right? It's not just a one-way flow. So yeah, that's my take on communities.
Yeah. And I think the good thing is that, like you said, you were looking for a Salesforce partner, and, I think, it's having multi-platform, which is sort of the key thing there and let's face it, like whether you're selling Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, ClickUp, it doesn't matter. Like fundamentally the sales funnel is the same, and how can we all learn from each other when there's lots of deep technical groups that sit on the platform? This is more like, well, how do we run our business? How do we scale our business better in that community? So that's wonderful, and yeah, really do appreciate you being in the community. So we're now going to go into the deep dive, which I'll ask you some quick questions and get some even quicker responses. So you ready for that?
Awesome. I'm pulling that up now. Okay.
All right. Beautiful. Well, the first one is, what are some of the daily sales habits that help you to accelerate your sales?
I would say doing at least an hour of LinkedIn messaging, cold calling, email sequence enrolling. every day, whatever that prospecting activity looks like. That helps move the needle.
And do you eat the frog? Do you do it first thing, or do you do it, what time of day do you do it that hour?
I generally I on Microsoft Viva, they book 2 hours of focus time randomly throughout your day. So during the day, I try to do it during my focus time.
Okay, great. Well, the next question is around what technology helps you with your sales. And you've mentioned Zoom Info, you've mentioned Lead Feeder, Tense Data, HubSpot. So there's lots you've already mentioned, but is there any others that you use that you haven't mentioned as yet?
I would say, Chorus.ai,
yeah.
Another, that's for sales coaching. So it listens to your calls, and the AI gives you sales coaching tips and that type of thing. Another competitor to Chorus is Gong. So using one of those two will help improve your sales capabilities.
So I've heard about it. I've never used it, but what's an example? What's something that you've changed recently based on the feedback it's given you?
So, I like Chorus because it sends you after action. So for example, in a meeting, you'll say like, I'll send you that PowerPoint and a meeting recording, but then you forget, or you don't write it down, so it doesn't happen, right? But then Chorus comes in and says, oh, you need to do this. There's also sales coaching tips that my husband has gotten. So for example, he needs to use like less ums and ahs. He also needs to give more time to the prospect or to the customer and let them talk more. It gives you those type of sales coaching activities. And as we scale the team, right, he's no longer the only one doing upsells and that type of thing. So we need to have a pulse on the team as well.
Yeah, it's great. Look, we use something called Fathom.video. It's free. And the owner was on the podcast. I just can't remember which episode, but it actually gives you a balance between how much time you've spoken versus the client. And it's quite interesting as you get into a conversation. And, my goal is 75-25. So, client speaks 75% of the time and I speak 25% of the time, but it's not always a reality. So, those built-in tools really help. And we've already asked about leads. So the last one, and it's the big one, I always leave it to the end. What's one action we can do to 10x our sales?
That's an interesting one because as I've reflected back, on our early days, it's really about growing your mindset, right? That's the foundational aspect. I would say if you don't have the mindset work done either through therapy or a coach or you need, or you have a sales program like Sandler, I would say you need to definitely work on the mindset. Because without the mindset, all those prospecting activities, all the discovery calls, the proposal calls, like none of it really works without having the mindset.
Yeah, I think well said. And just quickly, I had a client yesterday that, is, if any of you know what the DISC profile is, DICS, SC, I should say. So it's, this person in particular was, had always had a technical background. You got engineering, they had a technical background. So they were very high S&C, but not very high in D&I. So, even the thought of selling to them was quite difficult. So, they were very detailed. And I'm like, well, if you've got to adjust your style to who you're selling to, because if you're selling to a CEO who's a high D, the last thing they want is detail, right? So you've got to adapt your detail and getting that mindset right. And I agree with you. Like, people often say to me, I really struggle with sales. I'm like, yeah, but how long have you been doing it for? Like, you've been programming for 20 years or, doing development for 20 years. I spent 28 years in sales. Like, it's a big difference. So don't be too hard on yourself, right? But I agree with you. Go and, with that mindset, it's hard to change yourself and go and get someone to help with that. So, look, it's been wonderful having you on the Accelerate Sales podcast, Islin. So you can go to theiamarketing.com. So that's THEIA marketing.com to find out more. And if you're a HubSpot partner that's looking for some advice, Islin's always very open. She's great in our community, and also if you're an SMB or a mid-size and you need some help, you know who to go to. And the other one is that check out that RevOps Careers podcast. It's a great listen, so go and have a listen to that. But Islin, fantastic for having you on today.
Thanks, Paul. It was wonderful.
Really enjoyed that interview, and I love that Zoom info and intense data. If you're not using that, please look it up and even reach out to Islin and ask her how she's using it. And if you are using it, you get value from it, that or anything else you mentioned, give her a shout out on LinkedIn. As she said, she does a lot of LinkedIn outreach. It's her key platform, so she would love to hear from you. And also you can find out more at Theia, Theia marketing.com. It's very hard to say with this heavy cold. And, there's obviously all the links, what she mentioned in the podcast, in the show notes. You can get more, you can get a summary in the app that you're listening to. You get more in depth, and you can go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast to get that. You can even get a full transcript. And, why not share it with 1, 10, how many other people you think would get value from this? If you know a cloud consultant, an agency, I think this would be perfect for them, and be one of those friends that shares, and they'll think you're a rock star. Also, check out the solo shows. And don't forget that free Slack community, cloudconsultantscollective.com. Next week's guest is Doug Davoff, and he is in the HubSpot partner world as well, but he's going to talk about how you can get leads without relying on HubSpot. And he's got a really awesome perspective on that. So, as always, please take action to accelerate your sales.
I'm fired up after today's episode. What about you? But hey, before you go, learning is just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to put today's strategy into action. Head over now to today's show page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast and share how you'll put it into action. Be sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Tell me what your favorite episode is. And don't wait 1 minute more to gain access to your pulse check at paulhigginsmentoring.com. This could be the difference between struggling to get more leads and making this next quarter your best one yet.